Thanks, Buhle. President Cyril Ramaphosa was delivering a political overview at the three-day virtual ANC NEC Lekgotla currently underway. In an attempt to save face, the ANC plans to use Friday's constitutional court order forbidding the postponement of the local government elections to argue that the Electoral Commission must reopen the candidate registration process. But the Zondo Commission is also set to report back on its findings in October. And Ramaphosa has warned the ANC that it will come under sharp criticism when that report is released. The president has implored ANC NEC members and those deployed in government to engage and implement recommendations that will come out of the Zondo Commission. To discuss whether this will make any difference to the challenges the ANC faces, we're joined by political analyst Prof Sipho Seepe. Professor, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Let's start right at the beginning. The Constitutional Court has plunged the ANC into a deep crisis after rejecting the IEC's plea. How imperative and perhaps what's at stake as we explore the dynamics around this matter?
Well, the stakes are high if you consider that the ANC had not submitted on time a list of candidates that are required to be part of this electoral process. And if one looks at the map, it will change the geographical and electoral map or outcome significantly. What it means that thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who would have voted for the ANC would have missed the chance. So effectively, you're going to have a number of municipalities, and some people have counted to up to almost 100 of municipalities where the ANC will not have fielded the candidate. So effectively, you're going to have a no-show by members of the ANC. And effectively, it will mean that the ANC will lose a lot of metros, and it will lose a lot of municipalities that are very significant. And effectively, it means for the next coming 5 years, the people who would have voted for the ANC will feel that they've been hard done. But it will not be because of the IEC. It will not be because of other political parties. It will be because of the ineptitude and incompetence of the ANC. The ANC has spent more time fighting its own comrades than paying attention to issues of governance and also organizational renewal that it promised. The whole idea of unity has actually gone down the drains. So this is no small issue in terms of the deepening of democracy.
Now, the ANC is desperately attempting to save face. They are going to be using this Concourt outcome to urge the IEC to reopen the process to register candidates. And how do you see that panning out, especially as we've also learned that opposition parties are also waiting to hear desperately the IEC's response to that, saying that should it open this process for the ANC, they're going to take this matter to the courts?
Of course, the ANC would want that, and other parties that missed the deadline. But one must understand that we have a precedence in this case. The NFP in 2016 tried to do the same when it failed to pay the fees expected on the deadline. And when it failed, it tried to go to the courts, and the court ruled that its incompetence is not a crisis for democracy. So when the ANC fails, it cannot argue that its incompetence should be a crisis for this country or for democracy. But what it hopes for is to see how the IEC is going to interpret the Constitutional Court judgment. There are two schools of thought in this regard. There are those who said the mere fact that the Constitutional Court declared the proclamation by Mr. Nkosazana Zuma to be unconstitutional, that resets the whole process, that the IEC is now at liberty to do so. But there's also another school of thought that suggests that had the Constitutional Court been if it wanted to have had the situation where it is not only voter registration but also the registration of candidates, the Constitutional Court would have been explicit. So it will depend on how the ANC adopts which particular interpretation and whether any interpretation will be sustainable in law. So ultimately, yes, we would be at the mercy of the court in terms of the interpretation because, as I say, there are two schools of thought. But the ANC and other parties that fail to meet that deadline would rather have the IEC open up the whole thing and reset it and claim that in the interest of making sure that the hundreds and thousands of our people are able to exercise the right to vote. These exceptional circumstances. But the Constitution does not give room to those notions of exceptional circumstances. So it will depend on how the courts will interpret the unfolding events.
What will then happen? I mean, what could the implications be should the IEC not open this process up, for the ANC?
Well, the ANC is very clear about what that means. What it means is that for the next 5 years, there will no longer be a party in government in a number of municipalities, and there will not be the main opposition parties in a number of municipalities. Effectively, it means the areas where the ANC would have contested, the ANC will be simply a bystander, simply looking at what it should have been doing, and simply being helpless. And I think that would be damaging to the current leadership of the ANC, because people and supporters of the ANC will blame them for having failed the organization and having failed to do what they're supposed to do.
Damaging to the current leadership of the ANC, also speaking to some of the internal infighting that we've seen really playing out on the streets of South Africa. ANC staff salaries have not been paid for a couple of months now. It really is a situation that shows a build-up of the challenges within the ruling party.
Well, maybe we should come to terms with the possibility that the ANC is disintegrating, that there comes a time when parties say that of former liberation movement must actually call it quits in terms of what they think they represented. What we have now, you have the role of politics or the role of money playing a major role within our politics and effectively undermining the very organizations. It is very interesting that the people who were willing to put close to R1 billion to support the Ramaphosa as presidency are the very same people who are not willing to assist the ANC for a meager a few millions to make sure that the ANC is sustained. So effectively, one can come to only one conclusion, that the money that was given to Ramaphosa was meant to destroy the ANC. Because if those people who were so generous in supporting his candidacy were interested in the ANC, they would have said, guys, our party is in trouble. Let us actually support it. But they don't give a damn, because as long as they have determined the game and how it's going to be played and who they are going to field, they are only interested in that. So effectively, the interest of those people will be served if their interest was to destroy the ANC. So this is how things work. When you start putting money into our politics, you actually begin to undermine the whole rationale for the existence of the organization. Instead, you end up with a rationale for the existence of an individual.
And very lastly, and very quickly, if you can, the Zondo Commission is set to report back in October on its findings within the dynamics of the ruling party. And President Ramaphosa has warned that the party will come under sharp criticism when that report is unveiled. What are we likely to find in it, especially with Ramaphosa, who was in the hot seat himself, answering to some really tough questions on things like cadre deployment within the governing party?
Well, first of all, the outcome of the Zondo Commission is already known. Cyril Ramaphosa himself went there and made it easier for Zondo Commission by saying the ANC is accused number one. Secondly, what we have seen is a platform where ANC members were paraded, saying things against each other. So what we saw there was a black-on-black violence in terms of politics within the ANC. It was playing itself out. So when the report comes, it will capture that. But also, what it will also capture, and if Zondo is being truthful to understanding how the Constitution works, the Constitution is very clear that the members of cabinet are individually and collectively accountable. So this notion of trying to find scapegoats in terms of a constitution does not work. If you were in the cabinet and decisions were made that are not consistent with the constitution or are not consistent with good governance, one should have resigned. But you cannot say I was there, I saw nothing, I had nothing, and I did nothing. That will not fly. So from that perspective of collective accountability, which the ANC has always put that their party is about collective leadership, they must also take collective responsibility. So he is correct that the ANC will come under hard criticism, but it's a criticism that we have observed. We've seen the whole movie playing itself out in our eyes. So there is no way that the ANC can come out of this without it being affected severely.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Professor Sipho Seepe rounding up some of the big talking points when it comes to candidate lists and the position of the governing party.